Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be doing a really exciting video and I'm gonna be talking to you about my top 10 favorite books of 2020. Right, let's talk about these books in the order that I read them. One is missing and it's the first one I'm gonna talk about because I don't have it right now. It's somewhere else. So, first book that I'm going to be talking about is Blue Lily Lily Blue, and Blue Lily Lily Blue is the third book in the Raven cycle, which is absolutely one of my favorite YAs, one of my favorite fantasy series. I just love it. It's very special to me, and Blue Lily Lily Blue is the third book in it, and it's the best book in that series in my opinion. And I read it this year. It was just absolutely fantastic. So this series is the story of Blue, hence Blue Lily Lily Blue. Blue, who is the daughter of a psychic, and she is in a psychic family of women, and she makes friends with four boys who go to the local private school, and these boys are Gandhi, the rich boy who has died once and is fated to die again, and who is obsessed with finding the Raven King. Ronan, whose family has many secrets and whose father has died. Adam, who has a complicated family life and really wants to get out of their small town. And Noah, who is a bit bland and very sad. That's a terrible description of all of them. I'm so sorry. But anyway, they get together and they form a really intense friendship, and they are hunting for the Raven King, this Welsh king, and who is said to be able to grant wishes to whoever will find him. This is a terrible description for a series that I adore, and I'm sorry about that. I still haven't learned how to talk about that series for some reason. But anyways, that was such a good book. I read it around like January, February, and it is my favorite in the series. So I give that 4 stars. Then I read Bunny. These are not in order of like what I would like least, what I've liked best. They're just in order of what I read first. And Bunny might be the best of the year, but spoilers for another video. Anyways, Bunny is fantastic. It's the story of Samantha, who goes to a really prestigious art school. She's doing her master's there, and Samantha is a cohort of only girls, and these girls are really friends with each other but not really friends with Samantha, and these girls call each other Bunny all the time. Samantha really hates them, she doesn't like them, and they don't like her. Until one day, she receives an invitation to join them for a literary salon, or so like a kind of get together after school and discuss writing. Her master's in writing. Did I say that? I hope I did. Writing and all the sort of things, and then fucked up things start to happen. There is a little bit of gore, just a tiny bit. There is some really messed up stuff in here, and there is like a hint of fantasy in this book, which really kept me so entertained. I had no idea what was going on all throughout. It was kind of like having a fever dream reading this book, and it just stuck with me so much. I loved this book. I gave it 5 star, and it remained in my head for so long. All the emotions were so raw. The clique of these young women feels so like it could be in real life, and Samantha is such a good character. Like, I adore this book, and the fantasy element is my favorite that I've ever read. I recommend this book so strongly to anyone. So yes. And then I read 2 fantastic books back to back. Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and Take a Hint, Danny Brown. They're kind of like companion novels about the Brown sisters, who are the main characters in both of these novels. Get a Life, Chloe Brown is about Chloe Brown. Chloe Brown is a chronically ill girl, and she makes a list of things she wants to do before she dies. Things like riding a motorbike or having a one-night stand and things like that. And her landlord, Red, who at first they hate each other, he will help her to complete this list of things she wants to do, and feelings will start to develop throughout. I thought this book was absolutely cute. The romance is steamy, so steamy, and he is the dreamiest, possibly a dreamiest love interest I've ever read about. I really like Red, and yeah, it was great. What else? I love that it was a representation of a black girl and a chronically ill girl, even though I can't speak for how good that representation was, as I am not either of them, but it was really great book. I gave it 4.5 stars, I think, because the resolution in the third act, it was a bit rushed. The whole conflict was not as good as it could have been, and the writing overall, yeah, I feel like it could have been better. But the relationship and the story was absolutely 5 out of 5. Next, on another hand, Take a Hint, Danny Brown is about Danny Brown, a bisexual PhD student who doesn't like relationships. She only wants friends with benefits, and she prays in a universe to get a friend with benefit. And when Zafir, the security guard from her university building, saves her from a fire alarm emergency and carries her out of the building in his arms, a video goes viral of them, and they decide to start fake dating because this would help Zafir to promote his business. And Danny thinks she can convince him to get into a friends with benefit relationship with her. Problem is, Zafir is a hopeless romantic. So will something develop or not? I'll let you figure that one out. This one was so good. I loved the bisexual representation and the anxious representation. They were so dear to my heart. There is a scene where Zafir has a panic attack, and it felt so good, so perfect. I adored it. And the romance was really good. I was really interested in both characters and their lives, but I was also really invested into them getting together. I like the relationship less than I like the relationship between Chloe and Red, but I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars because it made me cry, it made me laugh. It was perfection. Next is If We Were Villains by Emma Rio. And this is the continuation of a trend in my favorites, which is dark academia. So If We Were Villains is the story of, what's his name? It's the story of Oliver, who goes to a private school for actors, and they all just study Shakespeare for the whole 3 years that they're there. They just study Shakespeare, and it's very intense, and only very few people make it to the last year. Oliver is in the last year with his friends, but someone dies. We have a double perspective of Oliver in the present, who has just come out of prison serving years for this murder, and Oliver in the past, who is living through the story, because Oliver in the present says he actually was not guilty. So we get to see the story from both perspectives, and there is so much intrigue, there is so much sort of romance and like attachment, friendship. It is an absolutely brilliant book. Some of the things were not surprising, but some of them were. And it just really captured me. I loved how Shakespeare was integrated all throughout the book. I love how the characters were, like who they were, how they were talked about, how they related to each other. It all felt so amazing. This book is a 5 out of 5 star. If you haven't read it, do yourself a favor. Then I read Find Me, which is, I'm still questioning it being on this list for some reasons that we'll get into, but I still really like this book, so I've decided to include it. So this is a sequel to Call Me By Your Name, which is one of my favorite books of all time, and this was pitched as the story a few decades later of by the end of Call Me By Your Name, where Oliver kind of reflects on the past and his regrets, his mistakes of what has happened, and tries to rekindle our relationship with Elio. But this is not what I got. We follow 3 perspectives in the book, in the 3 parts. The first part, we follow Elio's father in his new romance with a really young girl, and it's weird and creepy. And the second part, we follow Elio and his new romance with a man much older than him, and there is sort of a music mystery, which was a bit confusing. And in the third part, we follow Oliver, and we get him thinking about Elio and his relationship with Elio and what has happened since and everything. So that was a bit disappointing, which is why this book isn't 5 stars, but it was so beautiful and so meaningful, and the themes of fatherhood and being a child and all those things were so good that I couldn't not include it. So I give this 4 stars, and I really like it. And there it is, 9th house. There's a baby. This is my 3rd book in the dark academia genre that I read in 2020 and loved. This is the story of Alex Stern, who goes to Yale because she's offered a scholarship in exchange for keeping an eye on the secret societies, because secret societies have magic, and she knows this, and she has to kind of make sure that the secret societies are respecting the rules and behaving like they should. But when a girl gets murdered, she starts investigating because she thinks that something is going on. And yes, fantastic, amazing, I loved it. It was just so good. The magic system was my favorite part, and Lee Bardugo was so good at creating it and integrating it with real life America. It was so interesting to read. The twists, some of them were like kind of shocking, some of them were kind of predictable, but like the whole vibe was perfect. And the fact that it was double double perspective between Alex and Darlington made it so amazing because I love Darlington. So this one was a 5 stars, and it really solidified in me that I love Dark Academia now, so I need to read more of it. And then I read Crazy Rich Asians. This is the story of Rachel, who is in a relationship with Nick. Nick invites her to spend the summer in his childhood home in Singapore, but what she doesn't know is that Nick comes from a really rich family, and he is the most eligible bachelor in all of Asia. So she will have to come to terms with his family, who doesn't like her, doesn't accept her, because she's not Chinese enough, she's not rich enough, she isn't one of them. And with her love for Nick and their relationship being threatened. It was so funny, and I loved how it felt, how Asian culture was so well represented. The food, the description of food was just amazing. It was silly, and it was entertaining, and it was funny. It really felt so good to read, and I love this book. As I loved all the books in this list, as they are my favorite 2020 reads. Then book number 9 is The Black Flamingo. Look at its sparkle. This is the story of Michael, who is a queer gay man in the UK. He is half black, half Greek, Cypriot, and it's the story of him growing up and him coming to terms with his race and racism in the UK, him coming to terms with his being gay, him coming to terms with being different, and really coming into his own. And when he gets to university, he decides that he wants to be a drag performer. So dress as a woman and be on stage and perform. And his drag name is The Black Flamingo. And this book is just beautiful. It's written in verse, and it was very impactful. I love to see what a black gay man in the UK goes through, what a perspective of someone that really felt like they don't fit in, but they have accepted themselves even though society has told them that who they are isn't right. It just was such a good and such an important read. I think everyone, especially teenagers, should read this book because it's completely appropriate for everyone, and it really is very powerful, and it has a great message. So I felt like it was really important for me to include it in this list and talk about how good I think this book is. And I know it's getting a lot of praise, but I think it needs even more because it's so good. And then book number 10, we're closing with a graphic novel, Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This is a collection of short graphic stories where all about horror and sort of small town feel, sort of mystery, horror, creature stuff. That's the best way I can describe it, and it is absolutely stunning, and it is absolutely terrifying. Even though I've read some actual horror, I've read It, I've read Into the Drowning Deep, I've read Frankenstein, this is the scariest thing I've read this year. Absolutely terrifying, fantastic, amazing. and I loved it, and I gave it 5 stars, and I'm gonna read more of Emily Carroll because wow. I think, which one was my favorite? Ooh, I feel like my favorite one was A Lady's Hands Are Cold. Definitely the creepiest one to look at is that one, Lady's Hands Are Cold. But the scariest one overall, I think, was The Nesting Place. But they're all fantastic. I still recommend this book. And those were my top 10 books of 2020. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have read any of them, if you plan to read any of them. And yeah, thank you for watching. This was fun. Let's do it again.